When I was growing up, initially, my family didn't go to church. My dad was Catholic, my mom was Methodist, and she was married before, so that didn't fit well. My grandmother was Methodist, and when I'd go to her house, I'd go to VBS at her house and that kind of thing. And also, there used to be, and I know you wouldn't do this now, but there used to be vans that would pick up children and take them to church. That is so foreign now when I think about it. But I asked my mom, if I get up and I get ready, can I go to church on this van? And she would say yes, and they'd sleep late, and I'd get up and I'd go. And it was, I believe, a Baptist church, and I enjoyed it. There was Sunday school and there was church, and I brought my little Bible. And well, my brother saw how much fun I was having, so he'd get up and go. And I think in 1 year, he was baptized 6 times because he loved the attention. You know, you baptized him like last month, right? And then my mom decided to go back to the Methodist church, and she started going to church. And I remember getting my Bible at the church, my first grown-up Bible, you know, not the one with the pictures, but the one with all the words. And I got that Bible, and I was so proud of that Bible. Never opened it, but I was proud I had it. But I can remember watching the old black and white Frankenstein and being scared. So I'd sit behind the recliner, but I'd hold my Bible because I knew that if I had God with me, I wouldn't get hurt. And so I remember doing that with that Bible until I got older enough to read it like an adult. So like I always grew up knowing that God was there. Never doubted that. Always knew He was in my life. For the longest, I didn't understand what my part was in the relationship. You know, I went to church, went to Sunday school, I checked all the boxes. After I was an adult, I started reading the Bible from beginning on. You know, I thought, well, you need to read it at least once, so you start going through it. And I went to a retreat, and at the retreat, they talked about grace. And so when I got back from the retreat, we were, as a church, several members had gone, and we were like, yeah, I want to know about grace. You know, grace, I'd like to know more about that. So I was in Walmart, and there was a book that had Grace as the title. And so I picked it up to read it. And as I was reading the book, it's like it hit me in a way that no other book had hit me at that time. I remember, and I don't normally do this, I took notes while I read this book. And he presented salvation as a wrapped gift out there that you had to receive. Well, I had always had the box. I just never opened it. I never received it. And in that reading of that book, I finally opened the box. It's at that moment that I felt like my relationship was right with God. I'd had the relationship the whole time, but it was in that moment. It was important to be at church every day, every Sunday. It was important to be at Bible study at every time. It wasn't negotiable after that. I wrote all these notes in this book, and what it ended up being was kind of like a sermon. So I give all my notes to the pastor, and I say, look, God gave me this. You're the pastor. Here's a sermon. Take a Sunday off. That's the way I phrased it. So I give it to my pastor, and my pastor goes, well, if God has given this, then you need to give this to the church. That's why He's given it to you. So I'm like, oh my gosh. At that time, I was dating John, and I had to really, really pray about this. But John said, I will sit in the front pew. Don't look at nobody else. Just look at me, and it'll be all right. So I call my pastor, and I say, okay, I think I can do this. And it's really hard because you know all those people, and there's all that pressure. And I cried through it. And then when it was over, I'm like, okay, I'm finished. I'm done with this. I don't ever have to do this again. And I can hear kind of like in the background, you need to do more. Okay, all right, I'll do more. I can do more. At the time, we lived probably 4 blocks from the church we attended. So I would take care of when we had a meal at the church. I'd do all the background stuff so it was ready when service was over. I did that. I said that I would substitute for Sunday school when someone couldn't do it. I was doing every little thing you could think of. I was doing, I was picking up the mail, I was changing the church sign, I was doing the bulletin, I was typing up the newsletter that went out. I was doing all of these things. And I remember walking through the church to put the bulletins in the narthex, and I heard God tell me, you need to do more. And I'm like, God, what else is there to do except preach on Sunday? And I went, and I heard it I was by myself in the church. I heard it. And why not? And I was like, but do you know who you're talking to, God? I'm the quiet one. I'm the one that doesn't speak. How am I supposed to do that? I argued with him, and then, you got to use scripture. So you pull that out. When I was younger, I had a speech impediment. So I used Moses. I'm like, well, Moses couldn't speak and you gave Aaron to Moses. Where's my Aaron if you want me to talk? And I argued with God, but when he asked, what you going to do? So I never, ever saw that would happen. But he also said, and you've done it before. And you can't argue at that moment because you had. But when I looked over my lifetime, there were places all along the way that God was getting me ready for this. But you don't see them until later on when you're like, oh, I was ready for this moment because God had done this back then. So even when I made a path, you plan ahead. I was going to be an accountant when I got out of high school. So I took a semester of accounting, which helps with the banking and the administrative side of being a pastor. You understand your finances, where I wouldn't have had that any other way if it wasn't God who was putting all those places in my life before he told me, this is what I have planned for you. It's hard to say just trust, but if you look back after you've done it for a while, you'll see that God has had his hand on your life the whole time in such a loving way that he put all those things in my path that I thought were my tries at going down life, and it didn't work out and it seemed like a failure or I'm doing it wrong or all of those little moments. God piles up and goes, no, I was preparing you for this. And it's so beautiful and loving that once you're finished arguing with him, you feel his love and you can trust in that more and more. But then also, as the more you see the love of God in your life in that way, the more you can trust him in the places you are right now that you haven't seen him get you through, and know that he will get you through it. It gives you a love from the past in seeing his hand in your life, but it increases your trust for the future in relying on him. The other thing about all those places in your life where you feel like you have, missed the mark, or you've tried something that wasn't right for you, or you feel like you're a failure in a way that nobody else has failed before, it is in those moments that you connect to other people in your deepest places. It's not in the mountaintop places. It's in the places where you struggle. It's in the places where you've suffered. It's in the places that you hurt, that you connect with people in a way that is very healing. And it's a risk to share those places. But once you do, God takes those horrible, ugly places and makes them into the most beautiful moments in your life. And I think that is a beautiful thing that God does for all of us.